To those of you joining us today, this is our first presentation of the Public Safety Defined Benefit Plan. We are going to cover just the basics of the Public Safety Plan, looking at the different tiers. We'll talk about planning for some unexpected events throughout your career, service purchases and how those purchases can enhance your pension at retirement. And last but not least, we are going to cover the magnificent member self-service where you can do oodles and oodles of things at any time of the day or night. So let's get started. Well, initially, we kind of talk about, where we're going to be at retirement, and we get our benefit estimates and Social Security estimates and kind of putting everything together. It takes about 25 years of service through NDPERS to get to your pre-retirement earnings, to getting to about 50% of your pre-retirement earnings. So after about 25 years of service, you'll have about 50% of that as a lifetime benefit. Social Security, now depending on what time you collect and where your wages are and everything, you might add another 30 to 40%. So with that, you're looking at about 80 to 90% of your pre-retirement income, which is going to give you a 10 to 20% gap, which is, would ideally be saved, by additional personal savings accounts and investments. Keep in mind that there is no guaranteed COLA or cost of living adjustment in either your public safety plan or with Social Security. So let's get started on the Public Safety Defined Benefit Retirement Plan. A lot of words there, and let's talk about what that all means. We will look at the state public safety with prior service, public safety without prior service, and the National Guard plan. So first, let's take a look at the public safety with and without prior service. Let's kind of talk about what that means initially, with and without prior service. It doesn't necessarily mean whether or not you've had prior service. This refers to if your agency or employer joined the main plan before joining the public safety plan. If they joined the main plan before joining the public safety, they would be public safety with prior service. Now, if your agency or employer joined the main plan at the same time they joined public safety, or if they only joined public safety and not the main plan, then they would be public safety without prior service. Now, when we look at what the similarities are on the two, very, very little affects you, the retiree. Your final average salary is calculated identically, basically the three highest 12-month consecutive pay periods of your career. Vesting is 36 months. The contribution percent for you, the employee, is the same. Now, some employers may pay part of that 5.5%. Others may not. That is up to the employer. You will see that there is a difference in the public safety with the employer funds. Now, the employer funds with prior service is 12.63. Without, they are only required to put in the 8.81%. It won't affect a whole lot other than if you are buying sick leave or making that service purchase. Your early retirement on both with and without prior service is the same. You do need 36 months of eligible employment and to be at least age 50. The reduction is 6% per year on both, which is 0.5% per month. Normal retirement on both is the same, age 55 with at least 36 months of service, or you must meet the rule of 85. That is your current age plus your years of service needs to be at least 85. So you could retire at normal retirement before age 55 if you meet that rule of 85, but just reaching age 55 will also put you to normal retirement. And then your benefit multiplier. There are two tiers in each of these public safety plans. If you were enrolled before January 1st of 2020, so if you were first enrolled anytime before 2019 and earlier, you would be on the 2% multiplier if you were first enrolled on or after January 1st of 2020, you have a 1.75% multiplier. We'll talk about how that's important in your benefit calculation in just a few minutes. For those of you on the state public safety or the National Guard, the final average salary calculation is identical to the other two public safety plans. The vesting is also identical. Contribution percentage, as you can see, will be a little bit different in the state public safety than the National Guard. The employer percentage is a little different as well, but they still have the RHIC. Early retirement and normal retirement are identical and the same as with the other two public safety, and the multipliers exactly the same as the others as well. So if you were first enrolled on or before December 31st of 2019 on either of these plans, you would be at the 2% multiplier. If you were first enrolled January 1st of 2020 or later, that puts you at the 1.75% multiplier. When we calculate your benefit, this defined benefit formula is pretty simple for that single life calculation. We take your years of service times that final average salary, that's the highest 36 contributions there of the last 12 months, times your benefit plan multiplier, which will either be 2% or 1.75%, depending on which tier of the public safety plan you are on. Using those parameters, let's look at a sample of a public safety estimate. So if you are on the state public safety or tier 1 or 2 or anything like that, it will show over here in the tier, which is right under the member account balance. The benefit multiplier for this member, they are on tier 1 of public safety. It is a 2% multiplier for that tier 1. They are reaching normal retirement at age 55. So that's June 1st of 2037. This member will be age 55. They'll have 27.25 years of service in, and we're looking at a final average salary of about $72.39 right now. So we multiply the benefit multiplier, years of service, and the final average salary. That's going to give this individual a single life benefit of about $39.45 and 40 cents a month. Now, this is a taxable money, taxable income and everything, because everything has been taken out as pre-tax dollars. Now, this individual is married, so there are 2 joint and survivor options available. Now, the joint and survivor options are only available to a spouse. With that, if you take a reduction, so this member would, if they did a 50% joint and survivor, would receive about $3,772.99 a month. Now, if they were to pass away before their spouse, that spouse would reach out to PERS. We'd send them some paperwork and get them set up as an account, as a member on the account, and they would receive 50% of that. So about $1,600 a month, $1,650 a month for the rest of their life. They would receive 50% of what you, the member, were receiving as a lifetime benefit. If you would select the 100% joint and survivor, there is another reduction. And this is done kind of like life insurance companies determine the rates. It's not a straight percentage. So if you are much closer in age with your spouse, there's going to be less of a reduction than if there were a 10 or 15-year age spread. So when we're looking at this, members must be fairly close in age, because the 100% joint and survivor is about $330 a month less than the single life benefit. But taking that joint and survivor reduction, if something were to happen to you, the member, your spouse is going to be able to collect that full amount for the rest of their life. The 10 and 20-year term certains are also payment options. We don't see a lot of married individuals taking those, but if you're single, divorced, widowed, or maybe you're married and you've kept your finances completely separate, maybe it was a, late time in your life getting married and everything is kept separate and you've got your kids and grandkids on everything, you can sure do that. These term certains would be a lifetime benefit for you, the retiree. And then the term, now if you do a 10-year term certain, there's less of a reduction, as you can see, but the chances of this member at age 55 outliving that and making it past age 65 are very, very good. Our typical age is, at least into the mid 80s at this day and rate and everything. So, if that person lives 20 years, 25 years, there's nothing for that beneficiary. Now, maybe they do a 20-year term certain and, they just put their kids on there or whatever. And if something were to happen in less than that 20-year time period, maybe they passed away in 15 years, the beneficiaries would reach out, or we would reach out to the beneficiaries, and they would receive payments until that 20-year contract was satisfied. So in that example, about 4 to 5 years until that 20-year contract was satisfied. Another option that is available that way is your RHIC. This is what your employer has set aside $5 for every year of service. So this is nothing that you've put any of your personal money into or anything. But at retirement, you are able to use this. Once you start collecting your pension, you can start using your healthcare credit. That is a reimbursement on regular price insurances. It can't be used for prescription drugs or eyeglasses or any type of medical bills. It's strictly for insurance premiums, health, dental, vision, and long-term care insurance. Those are the only insurances that are eligible for that reimbursement. For an individual who's maybe taking a joint survivor benefit, you do not need to take an additional reduction as you see below here. If you've already done the reduction taking the joint and survivor benefit, you are automatically going to get the standard healthcare credit of the $136.25 as for this member here. Now, we've talked a little bit about this, that there's lifetime benefits. So your retirement dollars never run out. Now, we looked at the member account balance on that member estimate here. That member account balance, when we start paying from that, depending on which benefit option you choose, it's only going to take about 4.5 to 5.5 years, and that member account balance is depleted. Once it's depleted, we simply move you over from your member account balance over to being paid from the general pool. When we looked at where those member account funds were coming from, that way your employer is putting aside employer funds into the general pool, and you're putting the member account balance, you're putting funds into your member account balance. So when that member account balance is gone, we just move you over to the general pool where your employer has been putting money together with other employers. Those millions and millions of dollars are invested, and that's how you are guaranteed lifetime benefits. So even if you retire at age 55, you've used your member account balance up by age 60, you are still going to have a monthly pension for as long as you live. What would happen? Let's just take a look at what would happen on some hypotheticals here. Maybe you decide to separate from employment. You've just, you're moving or you're changing jobs or careers or something, and that certainly happens. We don't always have the opportunity to retire from the job that we're at currently. And there are several different things that you can do, and that really depends on whether you are vested in the plan, meaning that you have at least 36 months of contributions or have at least reached age 55, or if you are not vested. So if you have less than 36 months of service in, you can certainly leave that member account balance with PERS. It will accrue interest until you move it, or maybe you return to employment later, and then you can continue accruing service until you are vested. Or if you are not vested, you can also do a lump sum refund. Maybe you just want to cash it all out and you've got bills, or you want to move it into something else, another account or something. You can do a lump sum refund. Now, there are some tax penalties, and you could do a direct rollover, rolling it over into another pre-tax, maybe a 457 or a 401k plan, or you could do a combination. Now, doing any of those, a refund, a direct rollover, or a combination, you will be forfeiting any service credit that you have in that plan, and you would be forfeiting that RHIC healthcare credit that we talked about. So it's really important to kind of weigh your options. How old are you now that you're leaving? Could you be coming back to employment in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and just kind of look at that before making a decision to refund your money. Now, maybe you are vested, you've worked at least 36 months, or you are, age 55, you are eligible to receive a lifetime annuity. That is that lifetime payment we talked about. With that, you can retire as early as age 50 if you have at least the 36 months of eligible service. And like I mentioned earlier, there is a 6% reduction per year before age 55 if the rule is not met that way. So if you're not at least age 55 or the rule is not met, the rule of 85 for your plan, then you would have a 6% reduction per year. You can also retire with full benefits at age 55. So if you just go ahead and you've left, maybe you're vested, you can wait until you reach age 55, reach out to PERS, and you would be eligible to collect your lifetime pension. So even if you left at age 35, you've got maybe 3 years of service in, you simply have to wait until you reach age 55. You'd maybe want to call us a couple of months in advance, and you could start collecting a lifetime pension. The interest does stop accruing once the payments begin. So you'll continue earning interest on that member account balance until you start collecting. If you are vested, there is also a couple of other things. You could do the lump sum refund, again, with the tax penalties and any, forfeiting any service and the healthcare credit. You could also do a direct rollover into another plan, a 457 or a 401k, or a combination of the two. Anytime you remove the funds, though, you are forfeiting the service credit and the opportunity for that healthcare credit. Let's talk about some unexpected events. We might plan on retiring at age 55 or age 60 or whatever, but sometimes family events or our health or an unexpected accident or diagnosis can get the best of us. If as far as survivor benefits, there are survivor benefits on your plan. If you have money in your PERS account and you are not receiving a retirement benefit, there are a few ways that your beneficiaries could receive payments. So we're going to talk about that at this time. If you're not yet receiving a retirement benefit, but you've got money in PERS and you were to pass away, if you are not married or married, it doesn't matter if you are vested or non-vested, you can do a lump sum payment. So even if you've only been with us for 2 months, or if you've been with us for 10 years, vested or non-vested, any beneficiary can do a lump sum payment. You can just take that whole member account balance, take it as cash, or roll it into a pre-tax retirement account. And that is one option that your beneficiary would be offered. Now, if you are married, your spouse will also have a joint and survivor option. Now, this one depends on whether or not you are at normal retirement or not at normal retirement. So as long as you are vested, your spouse will receive one of these two options. If you're not yet at normal retirement, meaning you're younger than age 55 and you've not met the rule of 85 yet, but you were to pass away, your spouse would receive two options: the lump sum payment or the opportunity to collect a 50% joint and survivor. So 50% of what your single life amount would be, they would receive as a lifetime benefit. Now, maybe you are at normal retirement and something tragic were to happen, they would receive the option to do the lump sum payment, where they could do a refund or a rollover of the account, or they could take if you were already at normal retirement, they could take the 100% joint and survivor amount. So they would receive a lifetime benefit and the RHIC if you were, either you were not at normal retirement or normal retirement, the pension amount would just change. So if you're at normal retirement, they could receive that 100% joint and survivor option. Just kind of important to know because things can happen. Disability, what happens if you're either disabled on the job or an injury or something were to occur and you were not able to, meet the functions of the job and meet the demands. In public safety, there's a lot of crazy things that you're dealing with on a daily basis, whether you're working in the correctional institutions or, emergency responders or in police officers and so forth. The disability option is available, and we've got a great video on our YouTube page that kind of covers all of the ins and outs of it, but we're just going to cover a couple of highlights. In order to qualify for this disability payment, you need to have at least 6 months of service. So you're kind of considered vested after 6 months of service. You must separate from employment. Here's the kicker on it. You must be totally and permanently disabled. So this is not a short-term disability plan or something like that. It doesn't cover maternity leaves or, recovery from surgery. You must be totally and permanently disabled. Your employer would fill out part of the application. You would, and your treating physician would fill that out. All of that would go to our medical consultant for determination. And then within 60 to 90 days, you would get, results on whether or not your disability was approved. And what that amounts to under your disability plan would be that you would receive, if it was approved, you would receive 25% of your final average salary, a minimum of $100 a month you would have to receive. So if you were approved, that's what you would receive. We could run the estimates and everything. If you are applying for Social Security disability as well, which a lot of folks do when you are permanently and totally disabled, you'll want to let us know as soon as you get an approval notice. That Social Security disability award can, change up things you might not need to recertify. It can extend your COBRA for a longer period of time. It helps in all sorts of ways. So if you do get a Social Security award letter, get that to PERS right away, visit with your retirement counselor, and we'll be able to help you out on that. The last thing I want to mention is if you have some service with Highway Patrol or in the judges, they have a totally different disability plan. So what you're watching here, you'll want to go into the disability benefits under the state public safety plan, and that's where your correct video will be. Let's talk briefly on the importance of designating a beneficiary for your retirement plan. We've kind of talked about what would happen, to your pension if you were to pass, depending on if you're married and so forth. In the state of North Dakota, our North Dakota Century Code states that your spouse must be your primary unless they sign off on it. So when you're filling out that SFN 2560, you need to list your spouse as primary beneficiary unless you guys have had a discussion and they're like, nope, go ahead, you can list the kids or grandkids or whatever, and then they need to sign off on that document. If your spouse has signed off on that document, on this beneficiary document, we can't offer them a monthly lifetime survivor benefit. Then the beneficiaries that are on the plan would receive the options for that lump sum or refund. Now, the contingent beneficiaries, we don't require contingent beneficiaries on your retirement plan, but if your primary were to pass away, then we could reach out to contingent beneficiaries to pass along your member account balance without going to the estate or something. If you don't have any beneficiaries listed or your primary beneficiary has passed away and we don't have a new beneficiary, your member account balance will be paid to the estate. So it does get a little more expensive and cumbersome for your family members to collect at that point. Life insurance is something that you may or may not have with the state of North Dakota, depending on who your employer is and what your agency is. On life insurance beneficiaries, there's no stipulation that your spouse has to be primary. We do require a primary beneficiary, but there's no, the spouse doesn't need to sign off on that or anything else. Again, contingent beneficiaries are not required. But if something were to happen to you and your spouse at the same time, or if your primary beneficiary has passed away and you don't have a new one listed, then the contingent beneficiaries, we would reach out to them and they would receive the benefit. If we don't have any updated beneficiaries and no designated contingent beneficiaries, then we would send an affidavit about errors to the family members, and then it's paid in the order that the insurance company states the premium, states that the policy would be paid, generally spouse first, then kids, and then siblings. But it kind of depends on the insurance company. We'll talk briefly on how the service purchase and how you can purchase service and how that would enhance your benefit at retirement. There are several different reasons to purchase service credit. It could help you vest earlier. We had talked about meeting that rule of 85. So if purchasing, you can purchase up to 5 years of generic service, that might help you to vest a couple years earlier. You can meet your normal retirement sooner. Actually, the vesting is just for previous public. You can meet your normal retirement sooner by once you are vested, and you can buy the generic service. You can increase your monthly benefit, and you will also increase your retiree health insurance credits. So it might be just one of these reasons, it might be two. Some people purchase service for all four of them. So it really depends on what your motive is. Now, we talked a little bit about the different types of service. We do have, I'm just going to give a plug to our YouTube channel again. There's a great video on purchasing service, what that can do to your pension, and it talks about all of the different quirky little things, and how to run estimates and how to do that in member self-service. But generic service is one of the things that anybody can purchase. Any member on our plan, you do need to be an active employee, and you do need to be vested. So with anyone on the public safety plans, we are looking at 36 months of contributions or being at least age 55 as an active employee. Then you are considered vested and can purchase up to 60 months of service, so 5 years. Some people may want to purchase 1 month at a time. Some people a year or 2 years at a time. Some people just enough to get them to meet rule at a certain date. It all depends on what your goal is. If you are looking at vesting earlier or just want to purchase additional service, those of you who have military time can purchase up to 48 months of that military time. Maybe you have experience with another state or NDPERS, you refunded some accounts or whatever, you can buy that time back. You can buy time back if maybe you work for the state of South Dakota. You can buy federal or legislative time back. So if you've worked with the federal government or legislative, you can buy any of those. That's all considered previous public. You can buy a leave of absence or previous service that was refunded. Any of these here that we just talked about, you need to deplete the retirement plan that's associated with that previous public employment. So federal, legislative, state, military, any of those, if you've got a retirement plan that's associated with that time, you need to deplete that retirement plan, and then your purchase can be completed that way. Otherwise, if you're collecting on two, it's not a kosher thing to do. But the other service you can purchase, leave of absence, previous public that was refunded, and USERRA. There are some special provisions that apply, but if you are an active military and you're set out on deployment, your employer may or may pay for a portion of it or all of it, depending on how that's set up with your employer. But if you have USERRA, you can definitely reach out to us. We would talk about the requirements, usually requiring those activation orders and likely the DD-214 as well. Last but not least, you can purchase unused sick leave. If you're leaving employment or if you're retiring, that is the time you can purchase your unused sick leave. We'll talk more about that one in a little bit. That has a special calculation, but anyone can purchase their unused sick leave when they are leaving employment. General service purchases. Let's take a look at how purchasing 5 years of service could enhance your pension when you retire. On the left here, we have just might be a slightly low final average salary here, but this person has a $3,000 a year, a $3,000 a month FAS. They were on Tier 1. They've got a 2% multiplier, and they've got 20 years of service. Of course, our calculation, we take each of these, we multiply them together and come up with a $1,200 a month single life benefit at retirement, which is about $14,400 annually. This same person with the same $3,000 FAS, the same Tier 1 2% multiplier, but they've purchased 5 years of service, that person is going to have a higher monthly benefit, because when we multiply those out, it comes to $1,500 a month. So that additional 5 years of service has given them an additional $300 a month and brings that monthly pension up to $18,000 annually. Now, before everybody asks and wants to know how much is it going to cost to buy those 60 months, let me tell you, there's a lot of different variables. It depends on how old you currently are. It depends on how many years you have until you reach retirement. It depends on what your current final average salary is. The best thing to do to find out how much that time would cost you, whether you're looking at 60 months or 12 months or anything in between, you'll want to go to Member Self-Service and run a service purchase estimate. I'll talk in a little bit about how you can do that. But so if anybody wants to know how much it costs to buy anytime, you're going to need to go to Member Self-Service, or you could reach out to your retirement counselor. Now, with this illustration, we'll go back to the illustration here. With the purchase, $1,500 a month. Without the purchase, $1,200 a month. So now we're looking at, an additional $360,000 over 20 years versus $288,000 over 20 years. And it's an additional $72,000 worth of income over that 20 years. Maybe you live an additional 25 years, or you've lived another 30, lived 30 years or whatever. So 25 years of service is just the estimate that we're looking at. For this person, the cost to purchase 60 months was $46,441.59. Keep in mind that your final average salary, your age, all of those variables are going to affect that cost. What we can do to figure out what your return on the investment is simply divide that increase, take that increase and look at how much extra is that per year. And then we're going to take that and divide that out by the cost. So it would take about 12.9 years, so almost 13 years for this member to have made up that investment, but we're looking at a guaranteed additional income for either, especially if you're doing a joint and survivor option, you would be looking at a lifetime increase. So, there's a lot you could do with $46,441. Maybe you're a pretty savvy investor and have things set up in high risk accounts or something like that. You might make more than that. It might take you a lot less time on that. But would that investment guarantee you the lifetime increase? So there's a few things you'd want to look at that way, and your retirement counselor could certainly help you, as could your financial advisor. But that's kind of an example of how you could look at that service purchase and how that would help you at retirement. So it's a pretty nice increase for that 5 years of service. For unused sick leave, the legislature has this set up for a it's a very, I guess, just a very concise formula. We take your final average salary times the number of months you want to purchase times your plan contribution rate. Now, we looked at that when we talked about the 4 different types of public safety plans, and that's going to equal the purchase cost. So this is really the only time where your contribution rate is going to affect how much your service purchase is going to cost. So with that member, they've got the multiplier here without. We're looking at the $3,000 FAS times the 2% multiplier times the 20 years of service. Again, that $1,200 single life benefit. Now, if they want to add 9 months of service credit because they've got 1,450 hours, we always divide the number of hours you have. So if you've got days or whatever, however your employer accrues that, we're going to convert that into hours and then figure out how many months. Now, we always round up. So this 1,450 hours would be rounded up to 9 months, which is going to give them 20.75 years of service. When we multiply that out, we're looking at a $45 a month increase for the rest of your life on that single life benefit. So since those contribution rates vary by plan, we'll want to take a look at what your plan contribution rate is, how much sick leave you have, and you can run the calculation, you can ask us to, but remember if you are looking at doing this sick leave purchase, don't worry about whether or not the employer pays for your sick leave. That is totally separate. Your employer might pay you a portion of your sick leave. They might pay all of it. They might pay just 10% or 20% or whatever. That doesn't matter. This is totally separate and available through ND PERS as you are a member, and you can buy that time if you want to, or you can choose not to. It is totally up to you, but buying your sick leave is completely separate than any purchase payment that your employer may offer. How may you do a service purchase? Where do you get started? We'll talk about how to get into member self-service in just a minute, but you can, of course, go into member self-service and run your estimates. You can run 1 month, 12 months, 5 years, whatever. You can also request an official estimate from ND PERS. When you do that, it goes to your retirement counselor. They make sure all the calculations are accurate. We send you an official letter with estimates that show what your pension would be with the purchase and without the purchase. And then you've got 90 days. There'll be an expiration date in there, but it'll be 90 days from the date we run the purchase. So the guy's got 3 months to, get a rollover done or that type of thing if you're looking at doing that service purchase. If you don't, it can just expire and there's no harm, no foul. The other thing you can do is you can also fill out the SFN 53718. That's the request for purchase information form. If you're a paper kind of a person, you can certainly do that as well. But I'll tell you, it's much, much easier to go into member self-service. Whatever you want to do, it's your choice. Payment methods. You've got a few different payment methods based on your service purchase. You can do a direct rollover for the pre-tax portion of your purchase. With all on the public safety plan, there's going to be a pre-tax portion, which is going to be a majority of the funds. There also will be an after-tax portion that will cover the increase in the RHIC, that retiree health insurance credit. So you're always going to have a pre-tax and a post-tax portion. You can maybe write a personal check. There will be some limitations depending on the 1995 or the 1998 IRS limits. Maybe you're buying right after you were vested or something. There may be some limitations where we have to adjust the amount of months that you can purchase to fall within that. If you're doing a rollover for pre-tax retirement funds, you can roll over from a 457 plan. Maybe you have that through your employer or through PERS. You maybe have a 401k for pre-tax retirement dollars. I do need to stress, even though PERS offers Roth now as a 457 option, we cannot take Roth funds for any part of the purchase payment. You can't use them for the pre-tax retirement dollars. You can't use it for the after-tax portion. The Roth funds are not accepted towards any type of a purchase. You can also, depending on the employer, do a payroll deduction. Payroll deductions are for up to 15 years, which is like 280 months. Most people just opt to do it for a few years. You can do that before or after tax. Now, it depends on the employer, so you might want to check with your employer if you're looking at doing payroll deductions. I know anyone who works for the state can do the payroll deductions, before or after tax, but some of the counties and cities, it might be a little different. And something else to mention is that your interest will apply when you are making installment payments. So when we send you out a breakdown of the payments, it will have the payments, the interest, and all of that. And it'll show you the whole spreadsheet of exactly where you are at for the amount of payments and so forth. And something to keep in mind with the payment on that money isn't going into thin air. If you've done a service purchase, you've paid for that purchase, that money is going into your member account balance. Now, if something were to happen to you, that money is going to go directly to your beneficiary. So you're investing in your retirement. That money is going into your member account balance, and it is yours regardless, of what you do later with it or anything. That money is in your member account balance. So even if you don't collect retirement, you decide to do a refund rollover at a later date for some odd reason, that money is yours regardless. Now, I've been talking a lot about member self-service and all of the amazing things we could do. I'm going to guide you through a few things in the member self-service and how to find out what you're looking for. Of course, when you go to our PERS website, you just go to ndpers.gov. If you've never been there, there's a little orange tab on the upper right, as you can see that we've got circled here. It's just called Member Login. If you haven't done an account yet, you would simply click on Create an Account. It's going to take you about 4 to 5 minutes. You'll need your email access and phone access. It does some multi-factor verifications to make sure you are who you say you are. But once you've got all of that set up, you just enter in your user ID and password, and this is what you're going to see. You've got a home page, you've got the ND PERS plans, your personal profile, benefit information. If you want to find out what tier you're in, if maybe you don't remember when you first enrolled, am I on tier 1 or tier 2 of the public safety with previous public service? You're simply going to click on that, and here it'll tell you you're on public safety, and then whatever type are there, and here it's tier 2 of the public safety they enrolled on or after January 1st of 2020. The different things you can do in here. You can go to that service purchase contract where I just said that, where we were just talking about. You can click on, there'll be 3 tabs to 3 drop downs. When you click on that, you can run your service purchase estimate. You can run an official estimate where we goes to your PERS counselor and we send out the letter for you and everything. Or you can view previous purchases in there. Benefit estimates, you can do the same thing. You can run those estimates with or without the purchase. Annual statements, when you retire, you'll see your check stubs in here, your 1099-Rs for taxes. You can update your address by going into your personal profile. Tons of things you can do in here, but just to see your plan and find out what tier you're in, you're just going to click on that Enroll, Update, or View Plans. That's going to show you what tier you're in, and then you can move forward. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. Help is always available. We haven't been at the Wells Fargo building for, I think this is going on 4 years now, so we are up at 1600 East Century Avenue. We're on Suite 2, which is on the southwest side of the building. It's actually right behind this fancy little blue rectangle. So you can, we do recommend you make an appointment because your retirement counselor, is pretty busy, and, we want to be able to give you the best time and attention possible. You can reach us by calling the 328-3900 or toll free 1-800-803-7377. I did mention our ND PERS website, which has a wealth of information on your public safety plan. If you're on any other plans as well, if you are a dual member, you can look at those. You can get into member self-service from there. We have Facebook and YouTube as well with a lot of information in there.